Okay, so I'm going to choose T on the tool menu, and that brings up our tools. And I'm going to run through these tools just so you'll be familiar with what they are. Comb is pretty self-explanatory. If you have comb, you can start combing. Smooth tries to smooth out what you just did with the comb. Don't really end up using that really at all. If you choose add, you can actually start adding emitters to your scalp, basically adding more and more hair. I would suggest doing that very sparingly if you need to. Like if you see a place that is just really blank for some reason, you can add hair. Let me go ahead and turn on include. This looks so we can see it a little bit better. But just keep in mind, especially when you are at a high number like this, every time you add a hair, you are also multiplying that hair by the children. So you get like that many more hairs for each hair that you add onto the scalp. So just remember, use that sparingly. Also, while I'm thinking about it, if you have something like this, 1,000 hairs or emitters, and you're looking at the renderer here, if you're having a problem rendering with Blender crashing, things like that, I was having a problem a while back. It was usually this was a little bit too high, and especially when I was trying to render from the viewport, it would crash. So that's something to look at. You may need to bump this down. It also seemed to have something to do, and I may be wrong about this, but it seemed to have something to do with the new hair shaders that are being used, and we'll look at the shaders in a minute. But back over here, we look at length. Here you can actually grow and shrink your hair. So if we choose grow, as you might imagine, and then you just paint along there, then it's growing your hair. I'm going to undo that. And shrink, of course, shrinks your hair. Okay. Puff. The best way to explain this is if I go to back to comb, and let's say that I started combing this hair and I just combed it where it's like getting into the scalp and it's like disappearing. If you choose puff, you can come along here and it helps bring that hair back out. And I need to hide that camera so it's not in the way, I think. There we go. Okay, so the next one is cut. And if you cut hair, instead of where you had before where you're shrinking it, you're actually deleting the segments along the hair length. So you're not just shortening the hair, you're actually cutting segments off of it, if that makes any sense. And then finally you have weight, and you can weight paint this stuff. If I start painting, that would come into play if you were doing some animations and say that your character is running or jumping or something, how the hairs react during the animation. Okay, and then with your cursor here or your selector, you have a radius, so I can turn this way up or make it small. Shortcut key for doing that. In fact, let me go into control up arrow so we can see this better. If I come out here, choose F, and just move my mouse, it will change that slider, as you can see on the left. So that's just a shortcut way of doing it. Strength, as you might guess, if I just start combing now, it's combing pretty aggressively. If I turn the strength down, it's combing, but not quite as much. So that's strength. And then under your options, we have particles, cloth, soft body. We're dealing with particles here, hair particles, so we're going to leave that at particles. Deflect emitter is pretty important. If we, again, like I was saying, if we comb this hair and it's starting to get into the scalp, starting to disappear, do some strange things, then you can come over here and you can bump this up. Say, just for example, I bump it up really high, and then you start clicking in here, you can see that it's just jumping off the scalp quite a bit because it has this limiter basically put on it as far as how close to that scalp it can be. So I'm going to bring this back down. Yeah, probably 0.050 is probably fine. Or actually 0.5 is what I really want, I think. Okay, we'll just leave it at that for now. We can always change it later. We want to keep links, we want to keep root, so keep that the same. You can, if you're having trouble, you're looking at your hair and you're having trouble moving it around, you can turn off children, and then you only see your, basically your parent hair, all 1,000 of them. Okay, so then you're ready to start styling a little bit, and I'm going to make sure this is on comb. Go into 3 side view, 3 on the numpad, and you can just start kind of combing away. And this part right here is the whole reason that I chose that very short hair. If you choose in your initial settings on the particle emitter, if you choose long hair, very long hair, like by default it was set to 4, you will find it extremely, that's cool, extremely difficult to comb your hair. In fact, I can turn occlude back on now. Make it easier to comb both sides of the head. Okay, let's see what it's looking like. Some rogue hairs here. It helps when you're combing, styling the hair, to just move around in all different angles just to see what the hair's doing, because it's always doing something weird. You go to see these over here. It goes all over the place. Hair for me has been kind of frustrating at times. It's kind of cool. I like it at times, but a lot of times it can be very frustrating. And one of my biggest frustrations, really can't say this enough, is trying to create long hair by making that hair, you know, a long length in the beginning. I'm just going to style this where it's kind of coming out a little bit. Maybe look better than just completely pulled back. Okay, so that's just a basic kind of setup. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time trying to style this correctly. So we have our hair, and then we say, okay, but yes, it is short hair and I wanted long hair. And that's one of the reasons for this tutorial is if you can do long hair, short hair is a breeze, so that's why we're doing long hair. So in order to make the hair longer, we're going to come over here and we're going to use the length function, and we're going to use grow. And just going to do Control 1 on the numpad so we get the back. Zoom in here and just start kind of growing the hair. Now I'm going to make this hair fairly long, but before you get too carried away, what I suggest is then go into 3 view and make sure that it's coming down the way that you want instead of kind of whacked out back here or whatever. If it's not coming out right, then just come in here and just start trying to comb it a little bit. There's really nothing there to comb for me right now. So back in Control 1 view, add some more length to it. Let's go ahead and add just really long hair, and I'll show you what the frustration with long hair is. You can already see it's kind of wigging out. Okay, so 3 side view, and that's what you get. You get hair that's just unmanageable. So when you choose your comb, you try to comb it, and it just doesn't do what you want it to do at all. You end up having to make sure your strength is all the way up. You try to pull it out so you can drag it out like this. And then once you have everything straight, you can kind of try to start bringing this hair in where it's supposed to be. But depending on your brush size and your strength, you'll find out that, whoop, it's starting to curl around again. So it gets very, very, very unmanageable when you get long hair. So I'm actually going to cut some of this. Try to make it a little bit even, I guess. And see if we can manage this a little bit better. Still not quite doing what I want it to do, but okay. All right, so once you have your hair kind of the way that you think it might be okay, I'm just going to do a quick save here. Go back into object mode and just do another render. Okay, so there's our hair as we have it right now. As you can see, it's not bad as far as hair goes. We can see if we look in here, we got a little bit better roots. I mean, they're not completely thick anymore, but I can see, probably should have made it blue hair to match your blue eyes. But so far so good. We can see a little bit of scalp there, but nothing, really bad. If you're seeing too much scalp, then you want to come back to your settings here and maybe bump up your render number here. Again, be very careful with that because you're adding just tons of hair when you do that, and adding to your render times and all that good stuff. So the next thing is to look at our material and get a little bit more detail into that. So we go to our materials here, make sure we have hair, and then I'm going to choose the node editor. All right, so let me go control up arrow full screen here so you can see it. And they have some new nodes here that is specifically for hair. The hair rendering in cycles has been an ongoing evolution, and I'm sure there's going to be more changes to it as it goes on. It just keeps getting better and better, so that's good. So to start out with, I'm just going to X-delete the diffuse node. Shift A, I'm going to add and go to shader, and we now have this hair shader. So I'm going to choose that, and I'm just going to duplicate this hair shader. Shift D, bring another one down here, because it has two settings. One is the transmission and one is the reflection. So I'm going to make this one the transmission, which, if I understand these correctly, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the transmission is the main shading of the hair, and then the reflection would be like your specularity, how the light is hitting it. So in this case, move this over here, do Shift A, choose a mix shader under shaders, and just plug that one in there, green to green, green to green, and green to surface green. And let's move this over a little bit. Okay, and for the color, I'm going to change their color of hair to blue, just because I want to do something strange. And I'm going to leave the reflection at white, and I'm going to add another node. I'm going to choose Shift A, and we have an input node that is specifically for hair, so we choose Hair Info. Okay, and we're going to plug this into the factor, because right now the factor is basically taking both of these and taking 50% of one and 50% of the other, half and half. This will control how that factor is calculated. So you can kind of toy around with the different settings here. I find in-strand seems to put a lot of specularity on each individual strand, so it doesn't, for me, it doesn't only get the result I'm looking for. Thickness, it provides a different result, but intercept seems to be the best one to use here for normal human hair color or shading. So that's what I'm going to choose here. And then that's the setup that you should have. So control up arrow, back to our screen here. And I would like to do a viewport render of the changes that happen when I change these, but since Blender has been crashing when I do that, I don't want to take the chance that I'm going to crash Blender during this. So I'm not going to do that, but I am going to go ahead and do another render. So quick save and render away. And there you go, you have the blue-haired lady. So kind of cool looking to me anyway. I mean, the hair looks fairly realistic. Now with those nodes put in there, those actual hair nodes, the shading, you can see how the reflectivity is coming across, where the front of the hair I kind of bumped up, pushed forward. It's catching that light. The back is catching the light. Pretty nice, I think. So you can see how those shaders really make the hair come to life. Now, if you're trying this and you're not getting the result and it looks very, I don't know, flat and just doesn't look right at all, even though you've made all these settings, the reason probably is, if I do Alt-H to unhide everything, probably you don't have your lighting set up. And what I'm using here is whatever method, my method of 3-point lighting is. I don't know if it's correct, but this is what I use. If you need tips on 3-point lighting, I have done an animation tutorial, and within that tutorial I set up the 3-point lighting, so feel free to take a look at that if you need to set up your lighting. But definitely your lighting, your world background, things like that is important. For this, on my world background, I just chose background and chose a light color, and very little strength at all. Make sure ambient occlusion is turned off, and then of course your lighting set up. But as far as hair goes, creating some quick hair like this and getting halfway decent results, I think that covers it. By the way, if you're wondering what this kind of panel is, over her eyes, I put that panel in there to get kind of a reflection off of her eyes because they were looking pretty bland. So kind of hard to see here, but yeah, there is a little bit of reflection there. So if we look at our hair settings, I went over all the main settings. Oh, we didn't look at any of this clump and shape and stuff like that. Pretty much you can play around with this stuff. Like if you chose these different styles, curl, change the amplitude. You can get some pretty cool results. Radial is pretty much the same for this look. Wave, pretty neat. Braid. I mean, it's just a very quick way to get some very interesting results. And if you play around with the amplitude and things like that, in fact, I think I'm going to render one of these as my sign off, but change the amplitude and frequency and even the shape. I mean, you can get some very, very interesting results with that. And by the way, if you do use these settings, it's best to, get your basic hair styled first, get it nice and not flat, but just get a general style on there, and then go to these kink settings, because if you try to do it without, first styling your hair and combing it and all that, then basically you're going to end up with a kind of a random mess. But anyway, as far as all the settings in here, I know I glossed over a lot of them. That's why I'm going to put a link in the description for a tutorial that, it's a Blender training tutorial that pretty much goes through each and every setting. If you're interested in that level of details and understanding what these settings do and why they're used is very important, because you know, you have the tools then to make a decision on, you know, if you're going for a certain look, what do you need to use and how do you need to use it? So I'll include that in the description. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope it helped. And please comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.